Mr. President, we thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Valentina Reguabiza, and the Executive Director of UN Women, Sima Bajos, AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Bankole Adoe, for their briefings. We listened attentively to the statement delivered by Mr. Rosens and Gotungadang. We welcome the participation in today's meeting of the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Central African Republic, Sylvie Banpo Temon, as well as the Deputy Foreign Minister Angola, Esperan de Mendoza, representatives of Rwanda, Burundi, DR Congo, and Equatorial Guinea and the Republic of Congo. We have been closely following developments of the situation in the Central African Republic. We note with satisfaction that on the whole, the situation has been under control of the government forces. With the support of partners, including the Russian Federation, the Central African authorities have managed to surmount the most difficult phase in the fight against those who have attempted by taking up arms to secure an anti-constitutional coup. At the same time, security-related threats have not been fully dispelled. The armed fight against the government is something which the hardest line leading and most military-capable groups in the coalition of Patriots for Change, which have continued to engage in this. There is heightened activity of militants that has been observed in the border regions with Chad, Sudan, Cameroon, and DR Congo. The porosity of the borders, as well as the shortfall of financial resources to ensure border control, has prevented the Central African authorities from effectively countering the cross-border movements of illegal armed groups and their receipt of weapons. There's a need to step up coordination between Bangui and neighboring countries, and we have observed progress in this regard, including at the military level. Of key significance is also targeted donor assistance. The current arms embargo, despite its being eased, has reduced the effectiveness of the CAR armed forces, as significantly linking the capabilities of Bangui in establishing order in the country and cutting off the threats to the fighters, relating this and linking it to those who have refused to participate in the national reconciliation. A letter of the Secretary General was circulated, and this speaks to progress of the government of the CAR in an implementation of the benchmarks for reconsideration and revision of the sanctions regime. According to the assessment of the UN representatives, the authorities have been implementing significant work to ensure control over weapons, disarmament, and social reintegration of former combatants. Thereby, the current situation makes it necessary to fully lift the arms embargo against Bangui in order to boost the military capabilities of national armed forces and law enforcement units. This approach fully advances the interests of sustainable resolution and reconciliation in the CAR. Those categorically calling for the lifting of restrictions have included both the African Union and the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, as well as African countries at the Security Council. This is something which the Central Africans themselves have consistently been talking about. Clearly, long-term stabilization and incremental progress of the political process is impossible without the provision to the CAR of effective support in enhancement of military capabilities of the national armed forces as well as law enforcement forces. At the same time, we believe that the political agreement on peace and reconciliation in CAR, which was signed on 6 February 2019 in Bangui, that this agreement remains the bedrock for stability and security in the Republic. We welcome the practical steps taken by Bangui in advancement of the political process to normalize the situation in the CAR. It is necessary to ensure that this process incorporated the illegal armed groups who did not sign on to the Luanga roadmap, pursuant to which the parties assumed an obligation to end hostilities, to begin the process of disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of former combatants. Militant leaders need to abandon violent means of resistance. They need to begin full-fledged dialogue with Bangui, insofar as there is no alternative to a political diplomatic settlement in the CAR. We note with satisfaction the announcement of the dissolution of 5 illegal armed groups in late April this year. In this way, to date, 9 of 14 groups who signed on to the political agreement have been disbanded. This is a milestone in the process of implementation of the DDR program. At the same time, in order to further advance this, there's a need for Bangui to continue to receive appropriate financial support. We welcome the efforts of the authorities of the CAR to ensure a state presence, to strengthen administrative structures, to pursue security sector reforms, to develop a judicial system, and to prepare for the local elections, the first to be held since 1988. We wish Bangui every success in the organization of the constitutional referendum in late July. We believe that issues of internal reforms represent the sovereign prerogative of the Central African people themselves, who have the inalienable right to determine their own development paths. The dire socioeconomic situation in the country carries with it risks of reversal of the achievements in national reconciliation that have been made in recent years. The humanitarian situation is further worsened, and the budget continues to be burdened by developments in neighboring Sudan. 14,000 refugees have already reached the country. In this connection, we believe that the CAR should receive all possible assistance through international financial institutions and the United Nations. We deem to be unacceptable the politicization of the delivery of donor assistance, insofar as this affects civilians first and foremost. An important factor in building the capabilities of Bangui in the area of effective humanitarian response and on the whole remedying the socioeconomic situation is reflected in further progress in ensuring the full-fledged participation of the country in the Kimberley process. It is important for the CAR to receive a review mission of the process for the specialists themselves to see that the conditions for change on the ground have been met. We continue to help the CAR build its military capabilities. With the notification of the 21-27 Sanctions Committee, the country received more than one consignment of military equipment. In the CAR, Russian instructors have been working successfully. They've been sent to the area in response to a request from the legitimate authorities. There's been a campaign launched to discredit them and, on the whole, attempts to pin blame for violations for human rights violations. These attempts to pin the blame for the human rights violations on the CAR armed forces, bilateral partners, is tailor-made and not substantiated by established facts. We thank troop contributing countries. They have been risking their lives on a day-to-day basis, fulfilling their duty. The United Nations mission is a key factor in ensuring security and safety in the country. On the whole, we believe that it is important for the mission to focus resources first and foremost to help the authorities establish control, to counter armed groups, and to protect civilians. We further believe that the full implementation of the mandate is possible only provided there be continued constructive cooperation with the authorities of the CAR. Clearly, only comprehensive normalization of the security situation will help Bangui focus on creating a constructive internal context for the benefit of citizens in the state. In July this year, the Security Council should do everything possible to facilitate this process, including by lifting the remaining sanctions restrictions against the legitimate government. Thank you for your attention.